Hello, and welcome to the 2019 AUCD Emerging Leaders Welcome Webinar. My name is Anna Costales, and I'm the Resource and Dissemination Manager here at AUCD. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. Before we begin, I'd like to address a few logistical details. We'll provide a brief introduction of our speaker. Following the speaker's presentations, there will be time for questions. Because of the number of participants, your audio lines will be muted throughout the presentation. However, we will unmute your audio lines one at a time during the Q&A at the end. You can submit questions at any point during the presentation via the chat box on your webinar console. You may send a chat to the whole audience or to the presenters only. We will compile your questions throughout the webinar and address them at the end. Please note that we may not be able to address every question and may combine some questions. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on AUCD's webinar library. There will also be a short 5-question evaluation survey at the close of the webinar. We invite you to provide feedback on the webinar and also to provide suggestions for future topics. Now please join me in welcoming Megan Berhani. I killed it. I asked you how to pronounce it and I still killed it. You know, that's how it goes. Please join me in welcoming Megan, who will start off the webinar. Megan?
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Berhani. I'm one of this year's Emerging Leaders interns. And both Jasmine and I want to welcome the 2019 and 2020 Emerging Leaders. We're really excited to have you be part of this webinar and be part of AUCD and the Emerging Leaders community this year. This is a brief overview of what we're going to cover during the webinar today. We're going to introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about what AUCD is, as well as the Emerging Leaders community, talk about our responsibilities, introduce you guys to the website, talk about some ways to get engaged, as well as the upcoming AUCD events for this year. So like I said, my name is Megan. I'm one of this year's Emerging Leaders interns. I was born and raised by the beach in New Jersey, but I'm now a third-year developmental and behavioral pediatrics fellow in the Bronx in New York City. I knew I always wanted to be a general pediatrician, but it was really listening to stories from my mom, who's a kindergarten special education teacher, who inspired me to kind of go into the field of developmental and behavioral pediatrics. I always heard stories from her about parents and families having trouble accessing appropriate services for their kids, not being able to get diagnoses or evaluations. And I wanted to be there to provide sort of this family-centered care to children with developmental disabilities to be able to help both the kids and their parents navigate a very complex network. Outside of work, I really love going to the beach, especially the one by my parents' house. I love running in Central Park, as well as trying new restaurants in the city. And now here is Jasmine, the other Emerging Leaders intern, who's going to tell you a little bit more about herself.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you all can hear me. If not, please just put that in the chat box. So yes, I'm Jasmine Burns. I'm the other Emerging Leaders intern. Just a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Sacramento. I'm currently a postdoctoral scholar fellow in the LEND program at the UC Davis Mine Institute. And a postdoc is basically, for those who don't know, it's someone who has completed their doctorate program and are accruing the rest of their hours for licensure. I'm also a family member of individuals with neurodevelopmental disabilities. So one in particular that's very close to my heart is my little brother. And he is actually who inspired me to enter this field, because I saw some of the challenges that he faced when he was a kid, bullying and things like that. And so I really wanted to learn more about how I can help him and others like him as well. I also have family members and friends who have experienced traumatic events, and so I'm also very much interested in trauma-informed care as well. So I specialize in neurodevelopmental disabilities, trauma-informed care, evidence-based practices like cognitive behavioral therapy, and I love to do psychological assessments as well. I have many hobbies, but my main thing that I enjoy is spending time with my husband and 3 cats. I'm a cat lady at heart, as well as cooking, eating, singing. I dabble in theater some, and I like to travel a lot too. So next, I would like to introduce you all to the AUCD Program Manager, Christine Liao.
Hi everyone, my name is Christine. I am the AUCD Program Manager. I would like to share a little bit about myself before we get started. So I'm also a former trainee, like most of you. I did my traineeship in Arizona, and I was a social work trainee. And my interest, especially as a social work trainee, has always focused on the Deaf community, diversity and inclusion, especially making sure that all of our programmatic efforts are reaching the diverse community and it's inclusive of everyone. And another primary focus of mine is accessibility. But my role here at AUCD is basically all of you that are involved in the emerging leaders community, which includes the line trainees, the USAD trainees, and the IDDRC trainees. My vision with the emerging leaders community is that it can serve as a professional home for all of you to learn more about AUCD and the resources that we offer, opportunities for all of you to connect with us and with the other programs across the country and the territories, and be able to get involved with us and have leadership opportunities. And ultimately, my hope is that all of you can emerge as leaders. So I'm excited for all of you who are joining in today to have an opportunity to hear from Megan and Jasmine on how you can do that. So I'm going to turn it back to Megan now. Thank you.
Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is who is part of AUCD. And it's a very diverse network of people with disabilities, family members, educators, researchers, and professionals who all collaborate and work together to sort of advance the needs of the disability community. And this kind of is an overall schematic of the different parts of AUCD. And what AUCD actually stands for is the Association of University Centers on Disability. And it's sort of an umbrella organization that has a lot of parts underneath it. And if you look above, you can see these are 3 federal agencies that fund the training programs through AUCD. The first one on the left, MCHB, is the Maternal Child and Health Bureau, and they fund the 52 LEND programs across the country. And what LEND is, it stands for Leadership, Education, and Neurodevelopmental Disabilities. So this is an area where professionals, whether they be social work trainees, speech and language trainees, psychology trainees, get training in leadership in developmental disabilities. Sort of the middle federal agency is the Office of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, and they fund the 67 UCEDs across the country. And what UCED stands for is University Centers of Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. And I kind of think of this as sort of the advocacy wing of AUCD. So these are self-advocates, family trainees who really advocate on both a community, state, and federal level to advance different disability policies. And then on the far right, the last federal organization is the National Institute for Child Health and Human Development. And they fund the 14 IDDRCs that are also under AUCD. And IDDRC stands for Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Research Center. So these are mostly a lot of basic science or translational researchers who are looking at trying to find causes and possible treatments for intellectual and developmental disabilities. And within each of these 3 networks, there are trainees who all work together under the umbrella of AUCD. And I know I just kind of threw a lot of different acronyms out at you guys, and I think our field in general has a lot of different acronyms. And if you ever need help remembering them, which it definitely took me quite a while just to even get those down, you can check out a helpful acronym guide on the Emerging Leaders community website. And the link is included on the webinar here as well as in the chat. And now I would like to introduce Andy Imperato, who's the Executive Director of AUCD.
Thank you, Megan, and I want to acknowledge and thank you and Jasmine for your leadership in organizing the webinar. I've had a chance to get to meet with both of you individually since you began as our Emerging Leaders interns, and I'm really excited to get to work with you. Also want to acknowledge and thank Christine Lau, who's been a phenomenal champion for early career professionals on our staff and recently got promoted. So we're in the process of hiring a new staff person to be the lead staff working with the Emerging Leaders community. I like to be part of this opening webinar just to kind of introduce myself and kind of reinforce some of the messages that you're hearing from other speakers today. First, just in terms of my background, people are sharing their personal backgrounds. I grew up in Southern California. My discipline is law and policy. I went to Stanford for law school. I've been doing disability civil rights work for my career, mostly in the policy arena. And immediately before coming to AUCD 6 years ago, I was working for Senator Tom Harkin on the U.S. Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. I also just wanted to acknowledge Katie Brenleaves on the line, was a summer intern with AUCD in addition to her work at the Virginia Commonwealth University, where she's an expert on inclusive higher education. And Rodney Samako, who's on the call, is a phenomenal leader at our IDDRC in Houston at Baylor. Rodney, I think, has a real passion for early career professionals and trying to help folks in their development, and I really appreciate how much he's engaged with the early career professionals in the USET and LEN networks. One kind of exciting development that happened in the last year that I think is an important milestone for us is our directors voted to change the AUCD bylaws so that we now have a voting member of our national board representing the early career professional perspective. For the 6 years that I've been here and a couple of years before I got here, we had an early career professional on our board, but they did not have a vote. They were a non-voting member of the board. As of this November, that will no longer be the case. We will have an official board member who's treated like any other at-large board member who will be voting. We had 8 phenomenal people submit their applications to be the early career professional representative on the board. We have a nominating process where our nominating committee selected 3 of those individuals, and they will go out on the ballot and be voted on by all of our directors in the next week or so. So I just wanted you all to know, I see that as another sign that our board and our membership are recognizing that the work that we do with early career professionals is some of the most important work that we do. When I try to give an elevator speech for AUCD, sometimes I describe us as a $600 million research and development arm for the disability field, where one of the things we develop is people. And the reason I say $600 million is if you add the budgets of all of our centers together, not just their core funding, but what they're able to leverage and attract beyond their core funding, it's a $600 million network with about 6,000 people working in it. And then every year we have 3,000 new trainees coming through the network. And I feel like those 3,000 trainees are a critically important part of what we do. And I just encourage you during the time when you are a trainee or early career professional connected to one of our centers, recognize the resource that you have at AUCD. And that's what you're going to hear about on this webinar. You'll hear about it all year long from the Emerging Leaders interns. For those of you who are able to come to the AUCD conference, you'll get a really strong feel for it at the conference. We have over 1,000 people at the conference, and it's just a wonderful thing that happens in Washington every November. So I'm delighted to get to meet you virtually. I do a lot on social media, so if you want to connect with me, you can look for me on Twitter at AndyAUCD. That's the easiest way to find me because you don't have to spell my last name. but I'm Andy Imperato on Facebook and Andrew Imperato on LinkedIn if you want to look for me on those platforms. So I think I'm turning it now back to Megan. Is that right? So back to you, Megan.
Great. Thank you so much, Andy. Now just to talk, Christine alluded a little bit before to the emerging leaders community, and we really do want you to think of it as your professional home. And the emerging leaders community is made up of current and former trainees, as well as early career professionals. They span multiple different disciplines, come from all across the country, and we really want you guys to think of the emerging leaders community as a place to learn and to engage with other trainees, and also to use it as a bridge to the larger AUCD community as well. And one of the great things to check out is the Emerging Leaders Community website. The link is also on this page. It was sort of intentionally designed with emerging leaders' input about what trainees and early career professionals thought would be most important for them. And it's kind of divided into 4 sections that sort of, in a way, mirror how you kind of go through your training. The first section is Learn, which is where you can learn more about AUCD, more about the emerging leaders community. The next step is Connect, which talks about ways that you can connect sort of one-on-one on an individual level with other people in the emerging leaders community network, whether that's through social media or other platforms. The next section, Get Involved, is ways to get involved with the larger AUCD community. So things like the Emerging Leaders Map, which I'm going to talk to you about in a little bit, becoming a trainee liaison, which Jasmine is going to touch on. And then the last section is Grow, and that gives information about, taking your training into your next step, into resources for finding your next career, and using the experience you had here to better your career in the future. And as the Emerging Leaders interns, we like to think that we're a team, and we really want to be here for you guys throughout your training, sort of as a bridge between you guys and the rest of the network. We want to hear from you about your feedback, anything that you think could help make your training better. Me and Jasmine do sort of have separate responsibilities, but overall, we kind of want to work as a team. I'm mainly involved with sort of planning events similar to this webinar, as well as a lot of the trainee events at the conferences. And I'm in charge of creating the Emerging Leaders Map. Jasmine is more involved with training communication and engagement, as well as social media, and she's also the Trainee Liaison coordinator. So I mentioned the Emerging Leaders Map. What it is a map highlighting current trainees in the network. It was a project that was led and requested by trainees who really wanted to learn about what other trainees across the country were doing, what they were involved in, how they could connect with them and collaborate on different projects. And this here is kind of what the Emerging Leaders Map looks like. As you can see in previous maps, we've had trainees from across the country who were showcased. And if you click on each of the pins, it brings up information about that trainee, their program, what they're involved in, and also lists ways that you can connect and communicate with that trainee. So we really want you, if you know someone at your center who's involved in interesting research, community outreach, self or family advocacy, we would love for you to nominate them to be highlighted on the Emerging Leaders Map. So that way trainees across the country can know what they're working on, get to know a little bit more about your center as well as that person. You can email me at emergingleaders@aucd.org with more questions, but we're also going to send out more of a formal recruitment letter in the coming months, so be on the lookout for that as well. And now Jasmine's going to talk a little bit more about trainee liaisons.
Hey everyone, so we are currently recruiting for our trainee liaisons. It is a great opportunity if you're interested in leadership, networking, and just being the bridge between your center and AUCD. So there is a commitment. We do have monthly training liaison calls, and that's going to begin. It's going to begin late October, early November. I'm still working on the syllabus, which will be sent out after recruitment ends. There's going to be some social media interactions, and so you'll be able to send in some social media to me, and we'll post it on your behalf. An AUCD article, AUCD 360 article is also a requirement. That's just a monthly newsletter that we send out, and it just has all the highlights from sites, any research developments, any trainee highlights that you all want to share from your site. Each trainee liaison will be responsible to do one. So you don't have to do one every month, just one. And when we send out the syllabus and everything for those who are interested in accepted as the trainee liaisons, we'll talk more about that as well. And then attendance to one AUCD webinar. So this position is a 2 to 3 hour per month requirement. And so that's something to keep in mind just to make sure that it fits in with your training program as well. So for more information, we did include the link that goes straight to the trainee liaison page. I'm just going to pull it up on my end just to share a little bit more. So I already shared the responsibilities, but I also wanted to share a little bit more of the requirements. And so you do have to be a current trainee for the 2019-2020 academic year. You're going to want to get support from your from your program director or your training director. And this is important. I have already been receiving emails, which is great, from people who are interested, or from the person's supervisor, which is also fantastic. But it's really important that we're getting the program director or the training director involved, just so that we know that everyone's on the same page. And so there are 2 ways to become a trainee liaison. Again, that's if the director or training director from your program identifies the trainee and asks them to be the designated TL for the site. Or again, if a trainee expresses interest, they can tell their training director that they're interested and have the training director reach out to me. Okay, so if you are interested, just have your program or your training director email me at emergingleaders@aucd.org. Make sure that you're CC'd on the email as well. And your supervisor could be CC'd as well. And just include your name, your email address, and your discipline. I'm creating kind of a spreadsheet, so I'm trying to keep all of that in order. And the deadline for submission is October 11th. Oh, one other important thing that I did want to include, I know some sites are LEND and UCED, and so you can have 2 trainees if you are a dual site, if you're a dual system. So you can have 1 LEND trainee as a TL and a UCED trainee as a TL as well. So keep that in mind. Okay, I'm going to pass. Oh, I'm sorry. For social media, we are still working on some of our hashtags and everything, but as Andy had put on the chat, we do have a Facebook page, so please go ahead and like the page. We also have an Instagram at AUCD Pics. Our Twitter is at AUCD News, and please sign up for the trainee listserv. All of our links are going to be provided here, and so once the PowerPoint is posted, you'll be able to click the links and follow along. So next, I'm going to pass it back to Megan.
Great. Thank you, Jasmine. One of the things that I also wanted to talk about is getting involved with learning more about disability policy. And if that's something you're interested in, engaging more about policy education, you can check out the Disability Policy News in Brief. What that is, it's a weekly email about current disability policies. And what I think is the great thing about it is it gives really good and easy action steps that teach you how to engage with local and national lawmakers around those disability policies. For example, prior to Autism Cares being passed a couple weeks ago, a lot of the Disability Policy News and Briefs talked about ways that you could reach out to your local representatives to really push for that legislation to be passed. I included the link here that brings you right to the page where you can put in your email and subscribe. It's a weekly bulletin that goes out talking about what's current in the disability policy world. And then two of our big events this year that we really wanted to highlight. The first one is right around the corner, and that's the AUCD conference. Like Andy said, there's over 1,000 people who come to this conference. It's really energetic. There's a lot of engagement, a lot of networking. This year it's from November 17th to the 20th in Washington, D.C. There's going to be specific trainee events at the conference, both networking as well as focus groups that are specific to trainees to allow trainees from around the country to get to know each other, to brainstorm about how we can improve our training, how we can interact with AUCD. There are scholarships available because I know for everyone traveling to DC could be far away. You can check out the National Conference page or the Emerging Leaders website to learn more about the scholarship opportunities. The deadline for scholarships is coming up pretty soon. It's on October 2nd, but I would encourage everyone to go on the conference page, learn a little bit more about the conference, check out the scholarship opportunities. And then in the spring, in March, we have the Disability Policy Seminar, and this is more specifically focused on disability policy and advocacy. And I included the link here. You can learn more about that conference as well. So we talked a lot about the emerging leaders community and the ways to get involved. And I just kind of wanted to go through again and highlight the many, many different opportunities that emerging leaders have to get more involved with the community. The first one you guys are already doing, attending the AUCD webinars to learn more about the emerging leaders community and about AUCD. We really want you to represent your work and your program or your center by contacting me about the Emerging Leaders Map and nominating someone from your center who's doing really great work. Also contacting Jasmine or having your program director contact Jasmine about becoming a trainee liaison. We would love for everyone to try and get involved on social media, to keep in touch, see what is new, learn more about what other people are doing. We are going to try and use social media to highlight trainees as well as give current information about what's going on in AUCD and the emerging leaders community. In addition, if you want to learn more about disability policy, sign up to receive the Disability Policy in Brief newsletter. And we would love for everyone as able to be able to attend the AUCD conference in November and the Disability Policy Seminar in April. And we also wanted to touch on a really new and exciting opportunity that really just kind of got hammered out in the past week, and that's becoming a council trainee representative. And what this is, it's a new opportunity for current trainees, and it's to be involved on the different councils on AUCD. There are councils that focus on research and education, training, communications, and many more. And each of these councils is looking to have a trainee member who's involved to kind of be involved with them to learn more about what's going on the training level and how things can be improved. You can join us on the webinar on October 29th at 2 o'clock if this is something you want to learn more about. Also with this, if you're selected as a council trainee representative, you do get $500 to attend the AUCD conference in November. So it's a great opportunity to get more involved with AUCD, also to be able to fund a trip to the conference in November. And then I'm going to turn it back over to Jasmine.
Great, thanks, Megan. So because I'm in charge of the communications and engagement, I really wanted to hear from you all. If you can just, I guess maybe type into the chat just so as I'm talking so I can see what you guys are thinking. What do you hope to get from your AUCD training? I'm also wondering, what kind of information do you wish to get this year? I don't want to inundate you all with a bunch of emails and information. So if you guys can just specifically tell me, are you interested in certain resources, certain scholarships, things like that? That'll help me kind of pinpoint what kind of information you all are looking for. And then how would you want this information disseminated? I could continue to do emails, but do you guys want video posts, social media, surveys, things that are more interactive? So if you can provide that information, you can also email me, again, at emergingleaders@aucd.org. Just because, again, this will really help me personalize everyone's experience and then make sure that you guys are getting the information and the training that you want to get. I also wanted to just point out, I see that there are some questions regarding trainee events at the conference. And so I did post a link into the chat box that has the link for the AUCD agenda, but just some of the trainee events that will be held on Sunday, November 17th, we'll be having a trainee networking session. So that way we can all just come together, network with each other, share ideas, see what everyone's doing across the country, get contact information, things like that. On Monday the 18th, there's also a trainee focus group. And so that's something that Megan and I will be working on and we'll have more information about later. And then, of course, if you're interested, there are visits to Capitol Hill. And so you'll really want to work with your site in terms of if there are certain people that you want to communicate with on the Hill and setting up those appointments and things like that. We'll be posting more information as the conference gets closer, but those are just some of the exciting events that will be happening at the conference. And I just want to clarify that we unfortunately are not able to help with Hill visits, but that's, I'm sorry. We don't help with Hill visits. That's going to be the policy team at AUCD that'll help with that, but I'm just saying that that is an option when you guys go to DC, if you guys are going to DC. Okay.
And I also joined in with Jasmine because we saw some other questions that came up, one being about the emerging leaders map. And nominations open in November, will close in December, and anyone can nominate someone for the map. You can even nominate yourself if you're doing something you really want to share with the emerging leaders community. It'll be done via SurveyMonkey, so you can look for the email in November. That'll give more information to a link to the survey as what information that we need from you about what sort of thing you're doing that you want to highlight, who you are, things of that nature. And then also someone else asked about policy resources, and another great one that I didn't mention is Tuesdays with Liz. What this is a weekly YouTube video on Tuesdays with Liz, who is one of the policy advocates, and she talks about various policies that are going on and kind of a great way to stay up to date as well. You can also check out the Emerging Leaders website that has a place where you can learn about sort of the foundational policies and things that are already in place as far as legislation and how to make an impact on those, and also up and coming legislation as well.
Are there any questions or comments that you guys have for us?
Someone is typing, but in the meantime, just kind of going back to the last slide, you know, asking you what you hope to get from your AUCD training, and I guess I can kind of go in a little bit about what I'm excited for this year and kind of specifically why I'm so excited to be one of the emerging leaders. I'm in my third year of training, and I've been part of the LENG program here for 3 years, and I'm now about to finish my training year, and I'm really excited to use this as an opportunity to learn about what other people across the country are doing and learn about how different centers work, because, you know, going into a job in the future, I kind of know how things are done here, but it's great to be able to engage and network and see how things are done across the country. And I'm also really looking forward to learning more about how AUCD works and how to get involved with policy and advocacy, and also to get to know all of you guys at the conference next month, or in 2 months.
And then for me, I'm very excited about, I joined AUCD. This is my first year, so everything is very new and exciting. But the reason why I was excited to join AUCD is because it just feels so much like a family, and everyone is very passionate and everyone is very kind. I personally wanted to know more about advocacy and policy, because I know some of the patients that I've worked with, they feel like their voices are never heard. And so I really wanted to be that voice for people. I also have a strong passion for sharing resources with others, whether it's trainees, my patients, families, because I know sometimes it's hard to navigate certain systems, whether it's mental health systems or trying to access disability resources. And so I really, this is why I was kind of gravitated to being this specific emerging leaders intern. And then in terms of what I'm doing at my LEND program, because this is my, I guess, my first and last year with LEND. Again, I really wanted to just work more with and learn more about leadership. And I'm also focusing on working with 0 to 5-year-olds, because that is a place that I want to just gain more experience, because I think I want to do that more in my future as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, it looks like Katie had a question about the trainee liaison opportunity.
Yes. So I'm not quite sure what specific information you're looking for. However, again, the trainee liaison position is really to be the bridge between your site and AUCD. And so questions that other trainees might have at that site, you can bring to the monthly calls. Again, if there's certain trainee highlights that you want to share. Again, like I said, the research developments, just things that are going on so that AUCD is in tune with that site and the site is in tune with AUCD. We are a huge network, and so the trainee liaison position is very important for keeping everyone up to date and informed with everything. Again, we do have the monthly calls, and every month I'll send out the agenda so that you know what we're going to be focusing on. And then we are going to have signups for the AUCD 360 article, because like I said, there's one for the year that each trainee liaison will have to do. Again, send me social media posts for, Twitter and Facebook, and we'll get that posted for you. It's just a good way for us to see what's going on across the country, across sites. I hope that answered your question. If you do have additional questions, again, you can type them in the chat box, but I would be happy to communicate with you more via email. So again, you can send any and all questions to emergingleaders@aucd.org. And then in the subject line, you can even put trainee liaison, so I know that it's for me, because we get a lot of emails, and I'll answer those questions. You're welcome.
Yeah, this is Andy. I just wanted to chime in a little bit. Jasmine, I feel like we have not a lot of participants on this webinar, and I feel like one of the things that our trainee liaisons can help us figure out is what is the best way for us to engage trainees. It may be that a webinar is not the best format. It may be that doing it on a Friday is not the best, choice of day for it. But really, the liaisons are the voice of the 3,000 trainees to the AUCD central office, so that we're doing things in a format in a way that results in more trainees engaging, and we're making decisions in a way that benefits the trainees and is responsive to their priorities and feedback. And I think if you look at the new positions that were created on the councils, it's the same idea. We want to give trainees, while they're trainees, an opportunity to engage in our council on research and evaluation, which Rodney, who's on this call, is one of the officers of. We want trainees to be able to engage in our council on leadership and advocacy, or our council on community education and dissemination, or our training directors council, so that we're getting that perspective as the councils, which have membership from across our network, are making decisions about what they want to prioritize and what they want to work on.
Thank you, Andy, for that. Yes, that's correct. And some of those questions that are on the slide, again, about what kind of information is needed, how should the information be disseminated. These are things that the trainee liaisons could hopefully go to the trainees at their site and ask, and then bring that back to us, because that's really helpful information. Every year is very different. Every year trainees have different needs and wants, and so that's why I think it's important to have open communication in doing this. And we can have brainstorming sessions during these monthly calls as well.
Great, and it's good to see, Beverly, that you have 21 fellows on the call with you as well. And hello to everyone at your site. And thank you so much for getting involved with the webinar.
Yes.
Yeah, and like Jasmine was saying, we don't want to bombard you with useless information in ways that you don't find accessible. So you can even reach out to us via email as well, or through social media if that's your preferred outlet, to kind of figure out ways that we can get everyone engaged, which is really what we're here for and what we want to do.
Does anyone have any other questions, or is there something that we didn't cover that you want to know more about?
Or does anyone want to volunteer and tell us a little bit about themselves and why they're in AUCD and what they're hoping for from being a trainee this year?
Don't be shy.
No one of that 21 people over there in Massachusetts.
Oh. Technology, it's hard sometimes.
Yeah, and also as the conference is coming up, as well as we're starting to plan some of these trainee events, input from emerging leaders would be great about what sort of networking opportunities they feel would be the best, if there's any specific things they want to focus or talk about on in more of the focus group session. I think as of now, we are just starting the process and are really open to what sorts of things we want to incorporate into the trainee events of the conference, because we really want you to get the most out of your experience in DC.
And another exciting event that's going to be happening is the trainee professional networking breakfast. So there's like a trainee networking and then a trainee professional networking breakfast. And that's where professionals seated at a table, and professionals and trainees can go up and speak to the professional. So there are many networking opportunities, both formal and informal. And I'm not sure if everyone knows how to raise their hand, but there is like a little, on the toolbar at the top, there's a little person that's going like this. So you can just click that button and it'll raise your hand.
Hi, this is Andy. I just wanted to see if Rodney from the Council on Research and Evaluation wants to say anything to the folks on this call about what your council is working on and how people might be able to get involved in it. Not to put you on the spot, Rodney, but I know you're up to the challenge if we could make the technology work.
And then Rodney, I did unmute you.
So your line is unmuted, Rodney, it sounds like. And he's typing. Yeah, we can't hear you, Rodney. So maybe we didn't unmute your line. Try raising your hand, clicking on the raise hand button. Not working.
we think you have the opportunity to chat now if you want to try.
Rodney, you just have to engage your speaker to turn. It's the button that looks like a microphone. It might just not be clicked on.
While we're trying to figure out our technical things going on, I was just curious if people are interested in going to the conference or if they've already registered. Maybe if you're interested and or you registered, maybe just chime into the chat box like yes, I'm going, or even you can put a little green check mark. If you do the drop down where the guy's doing this with his hand, there's an agree. I'm just kind of curious because I'm really excited. Oh, Catherine's great. Okay, great.
Yay.
So we already have some people because we're really, really looking forward to meeting all of you face to face. Oh, is there a LinkedIn group? That's a really good question.
Oh.
I'm actually not sure if there is, but there we go. Christine says, so there is not one, but there is an AUCD LinkedIn. So there's not an emerging leaders one, but there's one for AUCD.
Yeah, this is Andy. There is an AUCD LinkedIn. It's not very active, and if we have a trainee that's active on LinkedIn and wants to get something going, either to make the AUCD one more active or to start one that's really focused on emerging leaders, we're totally open to that. I mean, again, we want to be active on platforms that you all are active on. So if you see an opportunity on LinkedIn, we're completely open to that.
Yeah, which is great. I think platforms change so quickly with what's engaging people the most, and it's great to see what current trainees are using the most, whether it be more social media or LinkedIn. And I think that's a great part of having these conversations is learning about better ways to engage everyone across the network.
One thing I just want to emphasize, this is Andy again, is think of AUCD as an amplification opportunity for anything that you want amplified. So if you get an award, we want to know about it so we can amplify it. If you are quoted in a news thing or you publish an article or you do a poster, if you kind of tag us on Twitter with your poster, we can amplify it. So just think of us as a place to reach more people with whatever you're trying to promote from where you are.
Was Rodney?
Yeah, and I think, I was going to say, I don't know if Rodney is still having difficulty. Anyone else with any questions or suggestions or anything else they wanted to talk about as the webinar is getting close to the end? Seems like Rodney's kind of typing in the chat what he was hoping to talk about over the microphone. And Rodney, that SMART goals for core is something new for me to have heard about. Could you maybe explain it a little bit further?
Yeah, while Rodney's typing this, Annie, I just want to remind people, CORE is our Council on Research and Evaluation. It has representation from across the network. Rodney is the vice chair of that council, and they have developed goals for their work as a council that align with AUCD's strategic map and some of our overarching goals for the association. Each of our councils has its own section on our website. So if you go to aucd.org, you can see councils as a header at the top of the website, and you can click on the Council on Research and Evaluation and get more information. So I know it's potentially going to take Rodney a while to type all of that, so I wanted to share that information.
Great, thank you. So it seems like just coming through, we have people on here from Miami and Massachusetts. Would anyone else want to volunteer sort of where their program is, where they're coming from for today's webinar? Minnesota. In Virginia, Michigan, so kind of all over the country, which is great.
Megan, it went by fast, but I just wanted to notice that somebody asked the question, are there opportunities for trainees to engage when they're not able to travel? And I think the question was specifically about engaging in the AUCD conference. So one way to engage with the conference without traveling, and also the disability policy seminar, is to follow the hashtag. So the hashtag for our conference on Twitter is hashtag AUCD 2019. And you'll see a lot. There's a lot of engagement and activity on Twitter around the conference. People are live tweeting the plenaries. There's lots of photos of things happening, including posters and poster presentations. And then there's a conference app that people can go into that conference app and actually see posters on the conference app. So we'll send out more information to you, but it's a great question. We usually have 150 to 200 trainees at the conference, and we have 3,000 trainees. So again, we welcome your thoughts about ways to kind of get that information out for the people that aren't able to be at the conference.
And additionally, if your site has a trainee liaison that's able to go to the conference, make sure that you talk to that trainee liaison about things that you want shared with individuals at the conference. And that's a good way for your voice to be heard, even if you physically can't make it to the AUCD conference this year. Any other questions? Or Rodney, were you going to be typing more about the SMART goals for CORE?
So Jasmine, I think Rodney said that it's probably better to send a link, and we're happy to do that. I explained to people how they could find it on the website, but we can follow up with a link to the CORE SMART goals.
Great, sounds good. So just make sure that you are all signed up on the listserv, the trainee listserv, because that's where a lot of important training information will be disseminated, stuff about the conference, especially as it approaches, resources and things like that. And again, please remember to email us if there are any further questions about resources or how to nominate individuals for the Emerging Leaders Map. We are very responsive, so please don't be shy.
Yes, and start looking for posts from us on social media. I know Jasmine's going to get started with that soon. We are still trying to think of a cool emerging leaders hashtag, so also if anyone has any suggestions for that as well, to kind of flag our posts on the overall AUCD social media pages. But in the future, look for social media posts, look for our emails that come out through the listserv. And like Jasmine said, feel free to reach out to us with any questions or suggestions, because we really want to try and make this year as great and a fulfilling and as much of a learning experience as we can.
So if there are no further questions, there is going to be, I'm glad you guys found this helpful. That makes us very happy. There is going to be an evaluation to complete at the end of this webinar. And Christine, I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk a little bit about that evaluation. I believe it might just be a survey or a link just to see how we did and how we can better do the webinar in the future.
Yeah, and it looks like the link for the evaluations will pop up when we end, so you guys can hang on and fill that out. Great. Well, it was very nice to talk to all of you guys, and I'm looking forward to meeting some of you in person, hopefully at the conference in November, or if not, through social media and through email.
Have a wonderful Friday, everyone. It looks like your day is almost over. Mine is still in the middle because I'm here in California, but have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend, and thank you all so much for tuning in.